Yeah, I try to click through the top if I see more windows than usual, but okay. So we don't have Stu today, so you have to do with supply teacher. Apologies for that, but I'll be leading this meeting, or I'll try my best, I suppose. In the email that I was sending, I said we have some housekeeping stuff, as in like looking for feedback and a few comments if you have them. I'll leave them to the end, so we can get the presentations first. So I'm not sure if there was agreed order if you want, but Ash, do you want to kick off with yours? You okay?
Yeah, yeah, no problem.
Cool. Floor is yours.
Great, thank you. So I've been, and I'm looking through the faces I see. There's a few familiar ones who have probably seen this before, so I apologize to those in advance, but there's enough that haven't, so that's good. So the issue that I'm trying to address here, we need a way for Arcadia or others to search all the data collected by the various projects that use arches without worrying about which database they might be in. Previously, ACHP, colloquially known as Arches and Coffee, we held a hackathon in Oxford in which we managed to successfully get data from various different Arches instances into one Arches instance in under 2 days, but this still required kind of intricate knowledge of the data structures of the various different projects in order to do anything useful with it. More recently, Farallon did a very good feasibility study explaining the costs and the workload required to transfer all the existing data into a single instance of Arches and integrate the vocabularies into a well-known ontology, effectively merging all the project's data into a single instance with common resource models and a common vocabulary. Um, Quite a lot of people, I think it's fair to say, didn't like the idea that they'd have to sort of change their data structures and, try and sort of form it towards an integrated thing. So I sort of thought, with my hacker hat on, there has to be another option here. So I'm going to do something very drastic now. I'm going to try and share my screen. And I don't use Zoom at all, so I'm going to have to look for the way to do this. Apologies. Um,
Bottom middle green arrow.
Bottom middle. Oh, share. Sorry, it was in a sub menu. I think it's just because I've got a small screen. That will be that one. So hopefully you can see a web browser with the word viaduct in the middle of it. Is that correct?
Yep.
Excellent. Right. So this is what I've come up with is I call it viaduct because it crosses arches. It's a joke. It's not funny, but it makes me chuckle to myself. So it's a meta search engine. For those of you who've been on the web as long as I have, will remember Metacrawler, which was a web search that pre-Google that searched all of the existing web searches at the time. And what it literally you just type one thing in and it sends the search off to lots of different Arches instances all at once. So if we were to type in my usual sort of test search, you search for mosque, and that's you can see that's come up with results from Mayasam, from Masa, uh, probably some Iamina ones down here as well. I mention Iamina because I'm involved in Iamina, but yeah, so that you can see it went away and it searched all these different Arches instances looking for um, things that match the term mosque. So it's kind of in two halves. So on the left-hand side here, this is business data, and you can view it on a map as well. It's very sparse, and the reason I'll get to the reason why that's quite sparse in a minute. But I kind of that's the sort of map search view that Arches doesn't have, and a lot of people have asked for. It doesn't. It only shows the results as opposed to everything. And on the right hand side, we have the semantic data, which are term matches. So we've got things that are related to mosque um, in various different ways from the various different databases. And this is kind of the read-only RDM search that Archers also doesn't have, that a lot of people have asked for. So the current version of this was built by a single developer, me, um, in under a week, and it's not intended to be a feature complete alternative to what Farallon had proposed. Obviously, that's much more work and will yield a much greater result. This was merely a demonstration of what can be done with very little effort in a very short time span. So how it works, as I said, for business data, it's a simple meta search. It's asynchronous, which means it does all the searches at the same time. So it's only as slow as the slowest instance, and it does have a 10-second timeout as well. So the longest any search will take is 10 seconds. If an instance takes more than 10 seconds to come back with a response, it will just assume that that instance is down and just not return anything from them. So for the RDM data, it actually pre-caches it. So it's a little bit like what Google does when it crawls the web. It goes looking for things so it can return results quickly. Because Arch is pretty consistent with, and it hasn't changed in its versions over time. You can get the RDM data as machine readable data quite easily. There's no security restrictions on it. The same with data models. They're very easy to obtain in machine readable format. So that's how it gets those so quickly. I mentioned security, and this goes back to what I was talking about with the map. The reason the map is so sparse is because some of the instances will not release information for various reasons. I mean, these are only non-logged in points that are being displayed here at the minute. And that's quite important because this was security kind of happened by accident here. Um, it only shows the public things. Security is handled by the individual Arch's instances. So if a random user can go in and search the Arch's instance and return data, then that data will appear here. But if you can't, then it doesn't. So if there's anything that's behind some kind of security checkpoint, for whatever reason, it will not display on this map and it won't appear in the results. This is good and bad for various different reasons. I mean, it means we can just completely ignore the very important issue of security here, but yeah, this is something that I've been looking at. So I'm going to stop sharing now. How do I stop sharing? Uh, okay. Have I stopped sharing or is it still showing?
Still
It
showing.
is
Still
doing.
sharing. Oh, this is, so I'm supposed to be the one who knows how to use technology here. I click share and it tries to make me share something else. Can somebody help me, please? Is there any?
Do you want me to
There
replace
you go.
you as a?
Yeah, can you do
Oh,
it, please,
it's
Janae?
gone.
Oh, it's
It
gone, is
stopped
it?
sharing. Right?
Done. It's all good.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Yes, so the only other thing I was going to talk about is potential future work. So there's we have the semantic data on the right-hand side, which still is not integrated in the way that we would like it to be. It's slightly better than what Arches gives you, which is an RDM hidden behind, there's no way to publicly view, at least version 7, there's no way to show the RDM without also being able to edit it. So this is kind of nice for that, but we're still getting lots and lots of multiple responses for all the different terms, which may or may not mean the same thing. That's something that I, as somebody with no archaeological background, would not want to touch because there are some things that I may consider to be the same thing that aren't. So the example I always use is, to me, a boat and a ship are the same thing. But that would probably offend quite a lot of my colleagues if I were to say that and assert it as indisputable fact. Of course, different people would have different domain expertise. So I was thinking of maybe sort of having some kind of user login for Viaduct. There's no way that no problem with doing this. It runs under Django, which is the same system that Arches runs under. So the user system is very similar. You could maybe link your user to other Arches instances or whatever. And of course, the the interesting thing about Arch's vocabulary is it's kind of linked data, and linked data is stored in triples, and one lot of triples added to another lot of triples is a bigger lot of triples. So you could have a triple in your personal data set that says this mosque is the same as this mosque, which is personal to you. So if I search for mosque, I actually want these two, but that would only appear on my user search. So if there would be that's the kind of idea that I had in mind, that I haven't actually implemented yet. But this is the sort of what I may do in the future if there's any call for it. So I've just given a general overview of what the software does at the minute. As I said, it was written very quickly and without much thought. But hopefully it will show what can be done with very little effort if necessary. So thank you very much for listening. And does anybody have any questions?
I think George puts a question into the chat.
Sorry, I'm not looking at the chat.
It's not actually. I mean, I do have questions, but that question is about the chat, not about the presentation. If I could, since I'm talking anyhow, ask a question. It's very cool. Looks like very nice work. I was wondering, so what you can search on is like you enter a string and it will find those across the instances, and it will also leverage the RDM. So if the string matches the RDM, then it will more precisely return results that are close. Like if the string matches the term mosque and the RDM holds that, then you can sort of leverage that to, I don't know, favor those results in the results list. Is that?
Yeah, I mean it's just a string search at the minute. It's not very clever, but there is potential to expand it in various different ways. Haven't quite decided what yet.
And once you have the list, then if you are interested in the thing, you click on it, it'll bring you back to the instance, the home instance, and you carry on with your work there.
Yes, it doesn't copy any data. It's just it's like Google. It's a search engine. It just points you towards. Well, sorry, no, not anymore. It's like Google used to be. I mean, they just point you towards other websites, and so yeah, it indexes it shows you just the summary, and then if you want more information, you click on the link, and it will take you to the actual Arches instance where the information came from.
So you're not going to flood it with advertisements about the best mosques before?
Oh, well, I wouldn't. Depends who has control of the future. You can never tell. Google used to say, "Don't be evil," once upon a time, I recall.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to ask if, or actually just propose an idea for some future iteration would be that, because there was that mention about the investigation of what to do about the different instances that have different data models. But I mean, it occurs to me that if every instance is modeled using CDOC-CRM, then even if they make different choices in doing the modeling, then ultimately speaking, if that data uh, were exported or made available anyhow as RDF as opposed to the native JSON format, which would be an obvious transformation because that's why it's been structured that way anyhow, then like an extension on this work would be that one could isolate the top classes and properties that generalize over those data sets for if you wanted to have like an advanced semantic search that looks a lot like the thing they're doing for the individual arches now. It would be, it's technically, or not, I don't want to say it's conceptually feasible from the data structure point of view that you'd be like, oh, well, all these have like made individual choices about how to model X, but they all use, E22 as the thing that is the top level thing for objects, and then you could make variations on names or something. So obviously that would be, non-trivial work, but it would be an interesting follow-on from this, which already does get you across the instances without having to migrate everything into one, consolidated, it must be this way instance or whatever, which is already very cool. So I guess that wasn't even a question. It was a comment. It was a thought.
Thank you. Yes, a good thinking point.
Okay, any more questions for Ash? No, I don't see any hands up. Clicking through the frames. Okay, so presentation number 2 for today. I'm so sorry if I'm going to butcher your name. Is it Junaid?
Yes, that's correct.
So there you go, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Yep. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I am Junaid Abdul Jabbar and working as a database developer for mapping archaeological heritage in South Asia project, which is based at University of Cambridge and is generously funded by Arcadia. So I'm going to talk about SQL data import option for arches. I presented a version of this in one of the developer meetings. So apologies if you are listening again. Jumping straight into it, as we all know, over the last few years, there have been several feature additions and enhancements to Arches. So now there are quite a few bulk data import options available to select from, which based on user requirements. So these include CSV import, which requires a structured CSV, and then it can be imported through command line using import business data command. There is shapefile import, which is very similar to CSV with a few exceptions, like it needs the geometries in WGS84, unique column for identifier, things like this. Then we have JSON import, which is primarily intended for transferring business data between Arches instances. So each of these has its own limitations and uses. But these first 3 options were available when we started working with Arches a few years back on Arches version 5.1. And I think with the release of version 6.2, if I remember that correctly, SQL import was made available for the first time, which offers much more flexible and faster data import and is especially useful when we are migrating data from a SQL database into Arches. And more recently, there is a availability of bulk data manager, which provides user interface tools which administrators can use to import and update large data sets in Arches. So to use any of these options, we need data. And for MASA, this is coming from the documentation of archaeology and cultural heritage of Indus River Basin and surrounding areas, which cover most part of Pakistan and Northwest India. So we are dealing with some quite complex site records, which have attribute and location variations. For example, in this map here, you can see the same site is reported by different researchers and has different locations. Even some of the recent ones with good GPS accuracy are documenting different coordinates. The actual location is documented by Singh et al. 2008. So when we were trying to clean this data and collate all this information, we tried a number of data formats, including bulk data sheets, geo packages, but we realized that there was a need for a collaborating working environment with GIS capabilities, where our team could reference multiple layers to see different data attributes and do the collation. For that, we deployed a centralized instance of Postgres, and top of it, we made a QGIS data entry form, which has the information as we would record in the resource model. This has allowed us to capture all that information from different data sources. And in order to capture that information, our resource model also got quite rich and also has nested multiples. So for example, heritage location resource, one heritage location can have multiple condition assessments, and then each of these can have multiple disturbance states. So now having a instance of Postgres, a SQL database, and then nested resource model set it up us nicely to use the SQL import option, because the CSV file has a limitation of importing any data which is of one-to-many cardinality. So it was quite useful for us. And in order to use that, we wanted to access the data from our Postgres instance in a dynamic and real-time way from Arch's backend Postgres. To do that, we have set up a foreign data wrapper, which can be done using Postgres FDW extension. Then you can create a server and user mapping, and then we can create foreign tables using import foreign schema to do this in a dynamically real time without making any copy of the data. Having all of this in place, now we can set up our relational views. So basically, SQL import is also known as relational schema. What it does is that it makes a relational schema for your resource models. So there are two ways, basically. If you are using the first set of query, there is a function arches create resource model views, and you can create resource relational views for all of the graphs that are published, skipping the Arch's system settings. Or if we want to create the relational views for a particular resource model, we can specify its unique universal ID, and it will create relational schema for that resource model. So this is the UUID of our heritage location resource model. When this query is executed successfully, it will add a new schema in Arch's backend Postgres, which would look, so basically it has like 45 views, and it maintains the integrity of parent-child relationships. So once we have this, now we need to import data into these views. To do that, there is a bunch of SQL. I've tried to keep it light touch, but I can show how we can import data for different data types. So each resource model schema will have a view of known as instances. And if you have, it has two columns, resource instance ID and legacy ID. If you have worked with a CSV import, you know we can specify the legacy ID using the resource ID column in CSV. And then Arches on the backend assigns the resource instance ID automatically. So over here, we are populating both of these things. We are getting this data from foreign table of HL resources, and the values that we are getting are UUID value and then the MASA ID, which is the legacy ID. We will see the importance of these two when we look at the resource instance import example in one of the next slides. Looking at the string data import, so with Arch's internationalization release in V7, all of the string data is now stored as a JSON-B data type, which includes the language key and then the value of the string, and also the direction, like this is English, then value is Amberwell, and direction is left to right. So in our case, if there are more languages like Hindi and Urdu, so the JSON object would look something like this. Hindi is also left to right, and then Urdu is right to left. So in order to make these JSON objects, we can write the query again and again for each of the branches, or we can create a function that is reusable. So this function is just a custom function, which is named as build lang JSON, and it takes text value and then the language code to return the Arch's compatible JSON format. So a full query to import a string data set would look like this. We have an insert block, and it has style ID, name, name type, which is commented out for now, and then the resource instance ID. For tile ID, we can use the Postgres UUID generate 4 function to have some unique universal IDs. Then the name is being converted into JSON using this function. We are getting the name from foreign table HL name, and these are English values just for now. And resource instance ID is same that we populated in the instances view, so that Arches knows which resource this data is related to. So as you can see, name type is commented out here because name type is a concept and data type in the resource model. And in order to import data for it, Arches requires the UUID for that concept rather than the value. So if the data has primary name, it would expect us to give it the value ID for it in the tile data. And we can create this lookup using, again, a set of functions, which takes the name of the schema, heritage location. This would be the name of your resource model in Arches Designer. Then we have the view name. This is the name of branch in Arches Designer. Then we have the column name type, which would be a node in the Arches Designer. So it would create a lookup table like this, and using the with clause, we can create a temporary lookup set to get that lookup table. And then when we try to import data for name type, here we are trying to match the strings with the values and getting their unique universal IDs, which are then acceptable by Arches. So looking at the resource instance, the Arches again has a specific format it expects the resource instance data to be in. It is the JSON array, which has resource ID of the resource that we want to create the relation to. Now you can notice this is a UUID over here. In previous version of Arches, where there was no resource instance node, we could use legacy ID over here, which would be much simpler and human readable, for example, Masa01. But in resource instance node, Arches expect us to give it the UUID that is assigned by Arches to that Masa01 resource. So we need to get that. Then we have the ontology property, the forward ontology property. This is the relationship ID, which is automatically assigned by Arches. And then we have inverse ontology property. And this is acceptable by Arches. So in order to get this, we can again use the with clause to make a temporary lookup set. Basically, in an example where we want to relate a heritage location resource with another resource from the person organization resource model, we can get the resource instance ID and legacy ID from that one. And we have to populate it in the assessor node, which is the resource instance type. And then we basically, just like concepts, we get the UUID for that particular legacy ID and assign it to resource ID key. We build a JSON object and then just JSON array, and insert it into the relevant relational view. So it also allows, this was one of the major challenges for us when we were starting to work, that CSV import had a limitation of importing nested multiples. And then there was JSON import available, but as the documentation says, it's not very user friendly, but it's doable. But we still thought SQL pipeline was a better way because it allows us to dynamically pull updates from our other instance of Postgres. So in order to do that parent-child import, we need to keep track of parents. So in an example, I said our heritage location resource model can have multiple condition assessments, and then each condition assessment can have multiple recommendation types. So over here, we need to import tile ID. And in the name example, if you remember, we were assigning tile ID using the UUID generate for function, which was just giving it UUIDs in real time. But over here, we need to keep track of these UUIDs. So we are populating this from a column that's pre-populated with UUIDs. This is named as condition assessment parent tile ID. So when we keep track of this, we can pass the same values to the children so that they get linked with this parent correctly. So we populate the condition assessment parent like this, and then looking at the child, which is the heritage location condition recommendation. There is a node for condition assessment, which basically contains the information for the parent, and we pass condition assessment parent tile ID And then there is no limit to how many multiples you have or how much level of nesting you have, but you just need to keep track of these parent-child IDs, and the data would load correctly in Arches. Finally, looking at the geometries, we have a branch known as geographic location, which has a node of GeoJSON feature collection, this one spatial coordinates geometry. And this basically accepts the geometry data type from Postgres, so there is no need to convert it into a WKT format. The data we are using is already in WGS84, so we can just use that geometry to populate this data. And once you have populated all of this data, we need to run this function select static from refresh GeoJSON geometries. Without this, the points would not be available visible on the Arches map canvas. So we need to run this function when we have imported all of this data. So now there is some more examples that are quite useful. I am not going to talk about these, because I think it will be too much SQL. But I have included those in the presentation anyway, if anyone is interested to have a look at it. And I am happy to share the link of this presentation. So there is a function for concept list. This is a custom function. Then we have a example how to import concept list. Then we have an example of how to import resource instance list, again with some of the example. And there is some example of how to import URL. If anyone is interested, they can look at these slides and test it for themselves. And finally, when you write all of your SQL queries, you can execute these. And if you're lucky enough and have no errors, then you can index the data in Arches. So these are just some screenshots from sample data imported using this pipeline. We have some points and polygon geometries along with search listing. We can see the resource relationships graph with all the relationship types. And then this is just a report view with some concept types, some string data, and concept data imported. So SQL pipeline, SQL import option has some of advantages and some limitations, like as you must have seen that it requires quite a lot of understanding of the resource model structure to keep to write queries for the different data types and also maintain the parent-child hierarchies, and it also requires the knowledge of SQL, but it provides much greater control over data input. We can do insert, update, or deletion for single branches or even nodes if there is any error we need to update. Then the most important thing for us was it can import nested multiples. It's quite fast. You need to spend some time on writing the SQL queries and functions, but once they are ready and if there are no changes in the resource model, you can just reuse it, and it works really fast. However, it does require a higher level of data validation checks. So you need to make sure if there is any particular type of error in your data, if there are concepts which have changed over time. So we need to write some checks for those. And it also can only mark the data as authoritative. So there is no provision to mark that as provisional because it's just insertion of data from the backend. So that's one of the limitations. So yeah, that's all from my side. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions and share the presentation if anyone is interested to use it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, do we have any questions? I guess if we do have overlap with the technical people here, that some of those may have been answered already. But anything new? Any more comments? Yes, George, go for it.
I can always ask a question. So in order to do this work, you need to know the data model and you need to know SQL. That was a point you made at the end. Do you imagine in principle that one could write a piece of code, just say, well, examine the data model. Okay, like it has this structure, this is cardinality, whatever, and then generate the SQL for it in principle?
Yeah, I think that it could be done because it's already there are functions which are translating your resource model into a relational schema. So there is some level of work there, but I think it would depend how you are trying to load data in it. For example, in our case, we are pulling everything for the foreign data wrapper. So maybe it can generate some select some insert part, but you would definitely need to specify how you want to select the data that you have to insert into it and maybe specify. So I think there is room for some kind of semi-automation to generate that SQL script, but eventually you'll need to make some final adjustment. Yeah.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Anything else? Any more questions? Any inquiring minds? Okay, so I guess it's time for housekeeping, as I promised. So do we have any comments or any tips and tricks of how you like this interest group, how you like the bi-monthly meetup? Do you have anything you want to add, anything you want to ask? Now is the time. Any pros and cons? Anything you don't like? Tough crowd. Okay. I take it everybody's exceptionally happy and ecstatic about this time frame and times of the day, and nobody has anything to complain about. But if you do have anything, please email me if you don't want to say on the call, or if you have something that you would like to bring to the teeny tiny committee that we have here going on. But as we said in the previous meetings, we do have a schedule now, so it's bi-monthly, last Thursday of the month. And now for the summer and the spring and summer, it kind of does clash with the UK holidays, if you want, in terms of school schedule, but I'm not sure if we can bend it or break it even more to a different schedule than this. We could try, but I would need to probably download all the calendars of all of the UK and possibly Europe and their holidays and try to see where we can squeeze in. But I think it works fairly well, unless anybody else has any comments on it. As I said, everything is being recorded, so it is on YouTube. If you do want to catch up, if you do want to refresh your memory on certain presentations, it's all available to you. For next one, we're looking at 30th of July, I believe. Yep. So again, I understand that it's in the middle of summer. If you can't make it, then unfortunately that's what it is. But it shouldn't. Hopefully, it shouldn't clash too much. But with that, I'm also requesting 2 volunteers with presentations. It doesn't need to be now or immediately, but if in next couple of months you have any exciting work coming up or anything you do want to run by the group or showcase or present, let me know, or me or Mike or Stu, we coordinate among ourselves, so we will put you in a rotation of the presentation. But if nobody has anything else to add or ask or request, then I think we're good for today. Thank you for the presentations. They were great. Thank you for the links. If anybody missed it, both are in the chat, so feel free to copy them, bookmark them, save it for a later date if you want to review them again. And I shall let you all go to have lunch, I guess, or get on with your day.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.